Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. In the last 2 days, the rivalry between Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi has become both more intense and more exciting. Yesterday, in a speech that has won widespread praise, Rahul Gandhi used satire and sarcasm to punch holes in the Prime Minister's image and performance. Today, Mr. Modi hit back with the same coin, but without even once naming Rahul Gandhi. So tonight we ask, who has won this battle of speeches? How effective was Rahul Gandhi's performance? How telling was Mr. Modi's response? My guests are former Congress Minister Veerappa Moily, BJP spokesperson GVL Narasimha Rao, RSS ideologue Rakesh Sinha, the founding editor of The Wire.in Siddharth Bhatia, and the senior fellow from the Centre for Policy Research and former press advisor to Dr. Manmohan Singh, Sanjay Baru. Gentlemen, let's start with Rahul Gandhi's speech in Parliament yesterday. In part 2 of the show, I'll come to Mr. Modi's speech today. Mr. Narasimha Rao, the Times of India has praised Rahul's speech on its front page, calling it a revelation, delivered, the paper says, with an easy confidence, where Rahul used laughter in a variety of shades to ambush the Modi government. Can you deny that Rahul Gandhi scored multiple points at the cost of your government and at the cost of your Prime Minister?
Rahul has indeed scored a lot of self-goals because his speech was full of bluster, false bravado, reeking actually of dynastic arrogance. And I think actually most of the people, independent voters who observed him, found him to be very short in both substance and in understanding issues. In short, I would consider this Rahul's performance, as you call it, as an insipid and an imbecile performance. And that's how the entire social media had made fun of Rahul's parliamentary speeches today.
Did you really mean that this is an imbecilic performance? Because you use that word imbecile. Do you really mean it?
Yes, absolutely. I made it.
Mr. Sinha.
Because the kind of adjectives that he had used, the kind of analogies he used, I think they are not used by serious parliamentarians.
Mr. Sinha, it was Rahul's sarcasm and derision that for most people in the audience who watched him, that really struck a chord. This was particularly the case when he mockingly called Arun Jaitley's black money scheme fair and lovely, or when he said of the Naga Accord, and I'm going to quote him, "It has vanished into thin air. Poof," he said, "gone with the wind." Even ministers like Jayant Sinha and Harsh Vardhan couldn't resist smiling and laughing. That's how effective he was.
No, I think you are making someone to laugh and you are making a speech in the parliament. Karan, you have to understand the difference between the college debating society and the Indian parliament. There are opportunities to make such comments and sarcasm. I will remind you, you must be knowing. Acharya Kripalani once said in parliament that till now I was knowing that Congress people are gundas. Now I came to know they are also aparhan karta, kidnappers. Because his wife, Sushita Kripalani, joined Congress. These things have some space in the parliament, but if these things occupy the entire space, then this shows that Rahul Gandhi lacks perspective. Rahul Gandhi has perspective deficit. He has no idea of the alternative economic policy. He has not made any criticism of the economic policy of the government, social philosophy of the government. So I think the people of India will judge a leader by his performance on the policy ground rather than how much you give you opportunity to laugh. It is not entertainment.
Except that when you make people laugh, you more convincingly make the point. And sarcasm, irony, wit and humor are a very good way of derisory treating the Modi government, and he did that to great effect.
Now, I am giving one point. He said, Prime Minister is not India and India is not Prime Minister. Had Rahul Gandhi said, I condemn the earlier statement of Devkant Barua, India is not Indra, Indra is not India, then he could have said something. Nobody is saying that Modi is the India and India is Modi. But things he had spoken is imaginary, and it is just to show the people that he has some guts to speak.
Let me take up that point with you, Mr. Moily, because there's no doubt, as Mr. Sinha points out, that some bits of Rahul Gandhi's rhetoric actually can be converted into a noose around Rahul Gandhi's own neck. When Rahul Gandhi says, and I'm quoting him, the country is not the Prime Minister is not the country, as Mr. Sinha pointed out, all the BJP has to do in reply is to say, absolutely, Rahul, we agree with you, but it's your grandmother to whom you should be saying this. Because it was the Congress president in her time, D.K. Barua, who coined that infamous slogan, Indira is India and India is Indira. This was a terrible lapse by Rahul Gandhi, and it was done unthinkingly.
I don't know, our friend who just spoke in the channel, I think I recollect when Church, immediately after the Second World War, Churchill was asked by the media, what is the reason for the war? Then Churchill said, Winston Churchill, jealousy, jealousy, jealousy. I think many of our friends like who has just spoken, I think it will clearly apply to them. Because when compared to the speech which is made on the floor of the House today by our Honorable Prime Minister and also our Rahul Gandhi, definitely this will make our rival political parties, not everybody, few of them, few of the leaders, to speak on that.
But
Mr. what is wrong?
What about the point? What about the point that Rahul Gandhi laid himself open?
Just tell me.
What about the point that Rahul Gandhi laid himself open to the attack? That when he says the country is not the prime minister, the prime minister of the country, that should have been addressed to his grandmother.
No, forget, grandmother, that is the past. Let us talk about today. If you go on analyzing that, there was enough debate on that. I don't think, the BJP is interested in only digging the past, living in past, and dying in past. That is what they do. We don't, Congress will always look forward. The past will also always pull you down.
Except that history has a way of coming back and haunting you if you forget about it, and history came back to haunt Rahul with this slip-up.
I'm telling you what is wrong in when... No, there is no slip-up. I'm telling you the manner in which he spoke with absolute clarity, maturity, and it was spectacular.
Okay.
And ultimately, he was so, he had such a sense of humility. Even when they criticize, he just, talk to them in such humility, which you cannot witness in either the Prime Minister or anybody else.
Except that they were pointing out a flaw, and accepting a mistake is better than arguing against it. Let me bring in Sanjay Baru. Sanjay Baru, the BJP criticism of Rahul Gandhi is that it was full of drama and lacked content. Now, the point that he made about the Made in India logo was no doubt very humorous, but it was insubstantial. Had Rahul Gandhi instead said that Make in India is nothing more than a redesignation of Dr. Manmohan Singh's manufacturing policy, and then backed it up with facts which are there and available, Rahul would have scored. But that's a point he didn't think of. So do you agree with the BJP point that it was drama, a bit like candy floss, sweet to taste, but insubstantial, and the major points were not made because he never thought of them?
Well, Karan, first of all, I think if Mr. Gandhi had made that kind of a speech, a serious, substantial speech, I don't think we would have had this discussion today on television. I think his purpose was to, in fact, make light of the whole, the seriousness with which Mr. Modi is taken by the BJP. And this was strategic. I can see this was strategic. Humor is part of parliamentary riposte. And I think he did a good job of it. I mean, you know very well that I've been a great critic of Mr. Gandhi's style of speaking and, leadership. I've never thought he was a great speaker, certainly not a great public speaker. But I think this was a very good, rehearsed, well-rehearsed strategic performance where there was a deliberate attempt to, in fact, let's say, prick a hole in the balloon, if you like. And he did that with finesse.
Siddharth Bhatia, let me put an opinion to you and ask if you agree or disagree with it. In comparison to Rahul Gandhi's own past performances, yesterday was a brilliant speech. But in comparison to the great speeches we've heard in the Indian Parliament over the last 70 years, his great-grandfather Nehru, Vajpayee, Manohar Loya, George Fernandez, Pilu Modi, in comparison to them, this was pretty thin gruel. Would you agree with that analysis?
Oh, I'll give a resounding yes to your question. It's a very well-framed question. There's no question, again, to say that when you compare to the greats, it's nowhere near that caliber. I may also point out that when it compared to those greats, we're pretty thin on the ground as far as the modern parliament is concerned. Hardly anyone is reaching those heights. Most of the time it's pandemonium, and when people are speaking, it's nobody gets a chance to listen to them. I would like to say actually that compare Rahul with what we have been expected to, used to, and what we have begun pointing out in the last 2 to 4 years, that he is actually quite a poor speaker and he doesn't have substance, he lacks sound bites. That's a very critical argument now in today's communication age, and on all those points he delivered yesterday. Secondly, I think there was a lot of substance, because he did talk about the Naga Accord, which is very crucial. Where is the Naga Accord? What is the Naga Accord? So he did bring that out. So there was substance. It wasn't as if there wasn't. Thirdly, if you notice, Karan, there were 1 or 2 moments in which he had spontaneous asides. So this is not fully rehearsed. Fair and Lovely is rehearsed. Certainly Babbar Sher may be. But, he had asides. He pointed out that he did not know everything like the RSS does. So there was a lot of cut and thrust. And I think that's wholly good for democracy. But Rahul has come of age, I would say, and is coming of age as far as speech making in parliament is concerned.
All right, gentlemen, let's widen the discussion. Mr. Narasimha Rao, Rahul's speech has done 2 very definite things. First of all, he's shown the Prime Minister and he's shown the BJP that both can be mocked with sarcasm, with derision, with irony, and you should now worry if the rest of the country starts following suit. And the second thing he's done, he's also shown the BJP that even though Congress has just 45, too small to even get leadership of the opposition officially, it can still rattle the government.
Karan, what is important is what is Rahul Gandhi wanting to be? I think we don't know that yet. If Rahul Gandhi is wanting to replace Lalu Prasad Yadav in Parliament and manage a few giggles in the house and outside, I think certainly he's on that course. But if he's really trying to be a serious parliamentarian, questioning the government on facts and substance, I think certainly he is nowhere to be seen. He is simply on a wrong track. So he is not a threat to us because we are in the business of serious politics. We do not feel any threat from non-serious politicians and who only make sloganeering and
can I interrupt and point this out?
Facts and
that
evidences.
Lalu Prasad Yadav, who you think is just a joke, although you didn't use that word, defeated you badly in Bihar. That sort of language, that sort of speech, that sort of idiom works with the people. And if Rahul's idiom works with the people, you're in trouble.
No, I think that's a different audience. Why Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav is successful in politics, I think people of the country can really make out. I think he's not successful because he's a governance guru. He's not voted because people have some expectations from him. It's out and out cost politics. If that is what Rahul Gandhi wants to do, possibly that's what he wants to do from what we have seen over the past few months. But a mainstream party like the Congress cannot pose a challenge to us from that kind of a political paradigm.
Mr. Moily, when Arun Jaitley says, and I'm quoting him, the more I hear Rahul Gandhi, the more I start wondering how much does he know, when will he know? Nothing illustrates that better than Rahul's claim in his speech that the UPA had made Pakistan a pariah state, that it had trapped Pakistan into a little cage. Not only are those claims by Rahul Gandhi completely factually wrong, but they also sound a bit shallow and silly from a man who wants to be Prime Minister one day.
Yes, Mr. Arun Jaitley has to say, it's, his master's voice for Narendra Modi. And in fact, the Rahul Gandhi raised very serious issues. The issues like the matter over Rohit Vemula suicide case, inflation, new opportunities, and JNU case, so and so forth. And of course, he has put it in a very presentable form, and so that anybody can understand it. And he said about the flag, he said, flag is not a mere cloth, and that is what he gave the example of a former president of Yugoslavia and Pakistan military ruler Yahya Khan, people who saluted the cloth, these people, but destroyed the relationship and conversation between their people. It's a great saying, you should understand the spirit behind it. You cannot make light of these things. And these are all the serious issues which he has raised, and did say that, we don't hate you. He said across the table, we don't hate you. Take us into confidence. Love everybody.
Okay.
He also said, you believe in one truth, or the RSS or the BJP believe in one truth, but there are many, many voices, many facets of the truth.
Okay.
Do you think that these are all the lighter things? I think the only people who cannot understand or cannot look beyond a particular one truth, can speak about it, not otherwise.
Mr. Sinha, the truth is, a parliamentary speech stands out for two reasons. Either for its content and its rhetorical flourishes, that was Vajpayee, or because of the damage it does to the other side. Now here, once again, Rahul scored. He scratched open issues where the BJP has deep concerns, firstly about the Prime Minister's surprise visit to Lahore and the dialogue he started with Pakistan. A lot of people in the BJP don't like it. Rahul very effectively scratched that open and left that sore bleeding. And then he scratched open a second sore. He exposed the Prime Minister's authoritarian control over his party and his ministers, and how ministers are too scared to even speak to the Prime Minister. Those are two realities that the BJP is deeply concerned about, and Rahul exposed them.
No, I disagree with your basic premise. In democracy, there are three things: ideas, institutions, and individuals. These three things constitute democracy. If individuals suppresses ideas in institutions, I consider that those individuals clones of Mussolini and Hitler. And Rahul Gandhi, when that individual carries the oratory, Rahul Gandhi is one individual who has suppressed the Congress. Now the leader of opposition is someone, but focus is Rahul Gandhi. Despite 44 seats, the abysmal performance of the Congress, not a single person, even the old guards who have been marginalized, speak against Rahul Gandhi, even speak their own voice in the Congress.
How many people speak against Mr. Modi?
No, I think there is need, when there will be need, people will speak. But here I say, Rahul Gandhi has habit to suppress the institution. One example, he has humiliated Manmohan Singh as the Prime Minister. They delegitimized the institution of the Prime Minister. Same habit he has demonstrated in the Lok Sabha yesterday.
Sanjay Baru, let me take the point that you heard from Rakesh Sinha and put it to you with this. Rahul's attack on the authority of Mr. Modi and the way Mr. Modi allegedly intimidates his ministers allows Jaitley in his blog to make the comparison with Dr. Manmohan Singh, who had little authority, and frankly, no one in his government was ever scared of Dr. Manmohan Singh either. And Jaitley makes, therefore, the following point. Given a choice between a hands-on Prime Minister or a nominal head, I would unhesitatingly choose the former. And there are many in the country who would agree. Once again, hasn't Rahul, by misplaying the point, laid himself open and laid Dr. Manmohan Singh open to that charge?
Of course he has. I mean, there are a lot of mistakes in the way in which Rahul dealt with issues, including what you mentioned earlier about the Prime Minister being the country being the Prime Minister, and what you said about Indira Ji and Devkant Barua. So there, when you start analyzing Rahul's speech, I think there are a lot of things one can say. He scored a wrong goal or self goal, as GVL Narasimha Rao put it. But I think it's the overall effect of the speech. The overall effect of the speech was that we now have this discussion. I mean, there is on social media generally a lot of interest in what did Mr. Rahul Gandhi say. Even those who missed the speech live on television are wanting to see it. So in that sense, he's captured something, public attention. But when you analyze the speech, of course you're right. I mean, Mr. Jaitley is absolutely right when they say, and as Mr. Sinha just said, it's not Mallikarjun Kharge who speaks for the Congress, but Rahul Gandhi. So, in that sense, all those structural problems which are there in the party remain. But we are talking about the speech and its impact. And I think it was a well-crafted speech, deliberately derisive, aimed at puncturing a hole. And I think it did manage to puncture that hole.
I suppose, Siddharth Bhatia, the real test of Rahul's speech is if it changes the way India thinks of him. There's no doubt that today, people look back on his suit boot ki sarkar jibe, and most people accept that scored a parliamentary bullseye. Do you believe yesterday's speech will have an impact on the way he is viewed, or is that expecting too much from that speech?
You know, well, the expectations from him were quite low. And I think a perception had built up, aided and abetted by some good propaganda too, that he was actually not up to it in any way, in content, in substance, in style, in flair, nothing. And when you compared it with somebody like Mr. Modi, who had many of those attributes, then of course he looked even weaker. So we are starting from a very low base. If the final in the final analysis, what we are saying is there are TV shows about this, there are discussions about this, front page articles about this, social media, a lot of discussion, and from what one gathers, approval ratings gradually rising, then he's been on the up. And if he's on the up, and there are ministers and spokespersons coming out and responding on their blogs, on television, clearly he is making a dent, he is making an impact. Because if you think, and if you've been saying that he's of no use and he's a child, then why bother? So clearly his speech yesterday, one more way in which he is making, delivering pinpricks and more to the BJP, and they have begun taking him seriously. He is no more someone to be dismissed, no more somebody to be irritated about, but someone to be taken extremely seriously, and they are taking him very, very seriously.
You know, Mr. Narasimha Rao, that is a point that actually made by Siddharth Bhatia, but proven by Arun Jaitley, who within literally a couple of hours of Rahul's speech issued a blog so that all the papers could pick it up this morning. And that proves that Rahul made his point. Because if Rahul was so ineffective, if he was only scoring self-goals, as you put it, Mr. Jaitley would have kept quiet. But by actually writing a blog, he's drawn attention to the fact that Rahul scored and probably drew blood. Arun Jaitley gave the game away.
Karan, I think a lot of what he said was not based on reality, and these misstatements had to be nailed and the counter narrative had to be given, because I think we have no doubt that there is a large section in the media which wants to play up Rahul Gandhi. A large section wants to keep Congress party alive. I think there is no dearth of friends of the Congress party in every media establishment in the country. So we don't want simply one point
There's no one in the media who's boosting Rahul Gandhi. It's the media that's exposed him to begin with.
No, I know this is a reality, Karan. This is a reality.
All right. You're entitled to your opinion. I won't quarrel with you. Welcome back. You're watching To The Point, and we're discussing what I call the battle of the political speeches. Let's come, gentlemen, to Mr. Modi's speech today. Sanjay Baru, Mr. Modi didn't mention Rahul Gandhi by name even once. But there were two clear references to him. First, to the tearing up of the ordinance on the 27th of September 2013. And secondly, and much more subtly, when Mr. Modi said, Umar बढ़ती है, लेकिन काफी बार समझ नहीं. Now, in your eyes, as someone who's advised prime ministers on their press performance, was this a clever tactic, or was it too subtle to be effective?
No, I think first of all, his 1 hour long speech was very, very prime ministerial. I think it was a very good strategy to respond to Rahul's humor and cutting humor for that in a prime ministerial way. He spoke with gravitas. And secondly, he seemed to really unsettle the opposition. I mean, the visuals to watch are the expression on Mrs. Sonia Gandhi's face on many occasions when Mr. Modi was speaking. And on 1 or 2 occasions, you even felt that she was turning back and looking at the backbenches to kind of encourage them to shout. So you could see they're unsettled by the style in which the Prime Minister spoke. It was a very prime ministerial response. I mean, these couple of incidents, points that you make, came to the end of the speech. So I think while Rahul's strategy was right in trying to poke fun at the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi's strategy was right in adopting a very prime ministerial tone. So I think in that sense, it was a very interesting playoff.
Mr. Moily, the other tactic that Mr. Modi made liberal use of was to quote at length from Nehru, Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi to make his point about not disrupting Parliament. This was not just done deliberately, but it clearly foot-faulted your party. And everyone could see whenever the cutaways were shown that both Rahul and Sonia were sitting at times wincing with silent embarrassment. That point went home very well, didn't it, sir?
I think first of all, one small remark I have to make on Sanjay Baru's statement that Sonia ji was looking back and asking the people to create problem, which is not correct. I was just behind. Madam at no point of time does this kind of politics, which people may think about.
I didn't say she was asking.
Another point which I would
there was a response from the backbenchers.
No, I'm sorry. That is how I. No.
What about Mr. Dr. Moily? What about my point? What about my point that by constantly quoting from Nehru, Indira and Rajiv, Mr. Modi foot-faulted the Gandhis and embarrassed them?
Yesterday, I will tell you, but we should know the body language of our Prime Minister. And our body language was very sarcastic. It was not an honest repetition of the sentence. It's not to highlight it. But I must tell you that, since Rahul Gandhi captured the imagination of the youth in the country because of yesterday's speech and the humility with which he demonstrated, I must tell you that he was totally shattered, Prime Minister, today. That is how, after 75 minutes of speech, he only at the last minute he came back as a Prime Minister. Before that, he was only a pracharak. And he just forgot that he was a Prime Minister of the country, where he has to answer many of the issues mentioned by the President of India. Many of the issues raised by not only by the
Do you really mean to say the Prime Minister was shattered?
He can afford to ignore.
Dr. Moily, do you really mean to say the Prime Minister was shattered?
And and the last sentence, it is only last minute he came back as a Prime Minister and said, let us walk shoulder to shoulder and do something to the country. That was a real good note as a Prime Minister he gave. Otherwise, he degraduated himself to a pracharak or a BJP leader that was not uncalled for. And another point is that he slammed the Congress for disrupting Parliament and stalling bills. He said main opposition party who are doing so because of the inferiority complex. What does he mean by that?
Just that you have fewer seats and you're very self-conscious about it, that's all. It's a perfectly legitimate rhetorical point to make. No doubt you don't like it because the rhetoric is at your cost. Mr. Narasimha, a more direct attack against Congress came when the Prime Minister talked about what he called Congress gifts to his government, which he called Congress ki deen. Here he listed Congress's failure to provide electricity to 18,000 villages, to provide toilets, and he also talked about the Bangladesh Accord, which Congress was unable to sign. But I put it to you that these were points that might have enthused and won cheers from the BJP benches, but would they really have a resonance with the media and the public outside? I think suddenly Mr. Modi was more concerned about the applause from the backbenches than the recognition he wants from the world outside Parliament, because this was not going to get that.
No, Karan, I think Parliament is a forum where any misrepresentation of facts by the opposition has to be, I think we have to call the bluff of the opposition inside Parliament. I think if opposition chooses to behave in a manner they want to peddle lies and misrepresent government's achievements, I think its Prime Minister is duty bound to place the facts before the people of the country. I think Prime Minister's speech was full of evidences,
that he wasn't
full
when
of
he said this correcting misrepresentations
full
about
of facts.
the government's
So
achievements.
tell me which statement or which fact that he mentioned.
All right. You are entitled to
I think the opposition is using the platform only for bluster and to cast aspersions.
You know,
and we have to call their
forgive
bluff.
me, sarcasm is not bluster. Sarcasm is a rapier that goes straight to the heart, and when it pricks, it can hurt. And that's clearly happened. But you know, I put it to you, Sudha Bhatia, perhaps one of the most telling points for the audience outside Parliament was when Mr. Modi talked about how Congress had so deeply entrenched the roots of poverty that it was impossible to rip the wretched thing out. And most people, when Mr. Modi was saying that, would have recalled that famous Indira Gandhi slogan of 45 years ago, "वो कहते हैं इंदिरा गांधी हटाओ, मैं कहती हूँ गरीबी हटाओ," and would have suddenly remembered failure to eradicate poverty is perhaps Congress's greatest failure. And Mr. Modi made that very convincingly. Or do you think I'm making the...
Well, firstly, at the outset, I must say that this cut and thrust of political points in Parliament is extremely welcome, especially given what has happened in the last 5 or 6 years. Had governments and opposition parties over the last 4 or 5 years been like this, we would have progressed much more. So I think that we should welcome that open-heartedly. I mean, who scored better goals is a separate point. Secondly, I think, yes, Mr. Modi did make a lot of sharp points, and quoting Rajiv Gandhi and Indira Gandhi and others, even Jawaharlal Nehru, in the most, kind of respectful terms, is a very good strategy because it takes the battle home to the opposition. But how do we not know in this country that the Congress has failed? How do we not know that they have not removed poverty? How do we not know that? It is because of those failures that it has been punished not once but several times. When you say the Congress has failed in this, yes, it has. Now let's move on. So in that sense, making a point in Parliament, while welcome in itself, is not going to carry it too far, because people know outside and people are now saying Congress is lousy, we understand that, we voted them out, let's get on with doing something.
Okay.
So in a sense, I would have thought that taking this opportunity to say these are 5 things that we have delivered and are on the way to deliver would be equally a smarter decision, instead of saying you did this, you did that, you did that, which is important in itself but limits the entire exercise, I felt.
There were, Mr. Sinha, some points that Mr. Modi made which actually were just pure rhetoric, and when you think about them, they were rather shallow and flippant. For instance, his suggestion that a day should be set aside only for women MPs to speak, or a whole week should be set aside only for first-time MPs. Those are sort of flippant, not properly thought through ideas that a Prime Minister who's only new to parliamentary practice would make. An experienced Prime Minister would say this is beneath me to make. It's not a serious point to make.
No, I think he has made a very constructive idea. You know, in Parliament, the backbenchers remain backbenchers for a long time. They are the equal. They have the equal status, and they should get the equal space. This time, Modi has made a point that such people should come out, and we should see the talents. Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the first-time member of Parliament, he spoke on the foreign policy. It was this speech that Nehru led him to call that one day this man will be the Prime Minister. So I think nobody should be the backbenchers. And what I say about the Prime Minister's speech in one line, it was the policy assertion and political rhetoric. It was a combination of the two. 3/4 it was a policy assertion the Prime Minister made. And Rahul Gandhi treated Parliament as a Hasya Kavi Sammelan. This was a Hasya Kavi Sammelan. There is no point. Even if you go to Hasya Kavi Sammelan, you get the spirit of some policies.
Okay. You know, Mr. Modi, one of the things that struck people about Mr. Modi's speech is that often he was wounding and attacking Congress by actually seeming to praise congressmen. A great example is when he said, Congress has many good speakers, but because you keep disrupting Parliament, you're denying your own people a chance, A, to make their mark, and B, to embarrass the government. Now, that was a very clever example of wounding and criticizing Congress by praising Congress speakers who could, if given a chance, have badly damaged his government. That was a neat twist that appealed to many people.
I'm very sorry that Congress cannot be wounded like that. In fact, Prime Minister spoke as a wounded soldier. He was hurt because he could not take the rhetoric of Rahul Gandhi. That was his failure. I think he just dealt with blame game, and he was only omitting venomous against the Congress party. The Congress party, yes, we lost, Indiraji lost, but came back within 3 years. And of course, Congress lost in again 89, and again we came back. And every time the Congress has gone back, but this kind of a frequency in recapturing the power is only done by the Congress in this party in this country. That you cannot forget.
No, the BJP is recaptured power after 10 years.
One has to draw lessons from just because the BJP has now come back to power. Even a great, definitely the great Prime Minister like Vajpayee could not come back in 2004. And same thing, and I think...
But his heirs came back in 2014.
Like to say that, it's only 2 years since Narendra Modi has become Prime Minister. But with the hate politics, he will not come back. Or the BJP will not come back.
Sanjay Baru,
write it down, and tell me after the next...
I appreciate your hope against hope. This is a great optimism of the Congress, which is uniting Congress despite this abysmal failure that people are uniting for Rahul Gandhi. You see the difference between Indira Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi. You should understand the difference between the two. You don't need your enemies.
Remember something, Mr. Sinha, Indira Gandhi, who was called Durga by Vajpayee, began by being called Gungi Gudiya by Rahul. Absolutely. So remember, if a Gungi Gudiya can become a Durga, Rahul can become a Colossus. And that's the future you could have to handle.
But Indira Gandhi took only 3 years to prove. Rahul Gandhi has taken 1 decade. He could not prove that he is not a Gunga Gudiya.
Sanjay Baru, the last 2 days have reminded me of the famous Harold Macmillan, Harold Wilson rivalry in Britain in the early 1960s. And during his first Prime Minister's question time, when Harold Wilson had just become leader of the opposition, it said that he went for the Prime Minister hammer and tongs and tore into the old Prime Minister. And everyone was shaken at the way the leader of the opposition was tearing apart the venerable Prime Minister. And then, in public, when it ended, the Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, walked across the aisle to the leader of the opposition, shook him by the hand, loudly said, "You are in great form, young man. Now you owe me a drink." And together they went to the House of Commons bar to show to the world, this is a job, this is not animosity and enmity between us. Do you think the time has come for some such gesture in Indian politics to bridge the divide and create a better atmosphere for the whole country?
Absolutely. I think, political differences are what define a democracy. Different political parties have different ideologies. They fight about their ideologies. But I think interpersonal relationships should be maintained. Nobody should live in anger or in fear. I think it's very important for the health of our democracy that the leaders of different political parties have a very civil relationship. That is how it used to be in the past. That is, I hope, it will always be. But on the other hand, because we are a country in which political leaders will never ask each other out for a drink, but at least they can ask each other out for a cup of coffee in the Parliament canteen.
Absolutely. Let me end with you, Mr. Sinha. The point of the story that I told about Harold Wilson and Harold Macmillan is that it would be a great day if Rahul Gandhi could say to the Prime Minister one day, "You were in great form, Prime Minister." And if the next day the Prime Minister can say to him, "Kamal kar diya, Rahul, Kamal kar diya." Because that would show that you don't have to be enemies, you can still be opponents, you can disagree, you can differ, you can dispute, but there's an amity and a friendship that is more essential, and that's maintained. Are the two of them incapable of that?
Karan, that is an ideal situation you are talking, but this is India where ideology Narendra Modi belongs to, RSS, that has been delegitimized. It couldn't get any legitimate space in their eyes. How could it be possible when you are delegitimizing the Prime Minister as a pracharak and RSS ideology is a fascist ideology? That is not possible, and that is unlikely to happen in near future.
All right, maybe there you speak not just for yourself, but perhaps even for the government, and that suggests that we are going to carry on with animosity, acrimony and bitterness rather than a sensible attitude to each other. Mr. Narasimha Rao, your wonderful finger is going up. I can see it. It's large as life. But sadly, sir, I've run out of time. But let me say, on this occasion, I assume that Mr. Sinha has spoken for you as well. And I see you smiling.
One sentence.
Go ahead. One sentence between friends is no cost to me. Go ahead, sir. One sentence.
No. No. I think we know politics, there is a lot of competition, animosity. I think you should try this in the media first, because we find the media itself really having a lot of rivalry these days.
You're
and one not
absolutely
seeing
right.
eye to eye with the other.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Narasimha Rao. There was a very famous advertisement which sums it up. We're made for each other. I won't say what that was an ad for. That would not be permitted on television. My thanks to all my guests for joining me. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.
Let's now get you the latest from Jalalabad in Afghanistan. The fierce gun battle that was on between terrorists and security forces has now come to an
Okay guys, we have to